Okay, folks, section 6.1, ratios. 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 Now, there are a few things that we got to talk about with ratios just before we get started, okay? Now, this first thing, it says a ratio is a way of comparing two numbers that have the same units. Now, look, guys, this is critical. They have to have the same units for it to be a ratio. If they have different units, it's a rate, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. But a ratio has the same units, okay? Now, let's look at the second thing. We can write a ratio in three ways, okay? And I wrote a little example up here, 3 cats to 4 cats. I don't know, 3 Siamese to 4 ginger cats, whatever, all right? Now, what we do is we can write it, like I said, in 3 ways. We can write it as a reduced fraction, okay? Right here, we've got 3 over 4. We didn't have to reduce that when it's already reduced. The first number mentioned always goes on top. So 3 on top over 4. And we get rid of the units because they're the same. Okay? Because they're the same units, we don't write cats. We just write 3 over 4. Now the second way that we can write this is 3 colon 4. That's just another way of writing a ratio. All right? And then the last way we can write it is with actually putting the word 2 in the middle of them. All right, 3 to 4. Okay, and that's the third way to write a ratio. Now, we are going to write it as 3 over 4 most of the time, but you need to be aware that there are 3 ways to write it. Okay? Now, this last thing I mentioned already, but the first number mentioned in a ratio is written on top of the fraction. Okay? Now, let's go down here and look at example number 1. It says, for the 2 tanks below, find the ratio of fish in tank A to tank B. All right, period. So that's what they're asking us to do first. So I want the ratio of the fish in tank A. Well, how many fish are in tank A? Well, there's 1, and there's 1. So there are 2 fish here. And then in tank B, there's 1, 2, and 3 fish. All right? So I can write it in 3 ways. I can write it as 2 over 3. Do I need to reduce that? Good. I can, right? It's already reduced. That's one way to write it. I can write it as 2 colon 3, or I can write it as 2 to 3. 2 fish to 3 fish. Okay? Now, let's look at the second part of this thing. It says, then find the ratio of the volume of water in tank A to tank B. All right, well, Mr. Cortez, which one do I write on top? Could it be 15 over 10 or 10 over 15? The one mentioned first, tank A, always goes on top. Okay, so it's going to be 10 over 15. Can I reduce that? You know what, I'll put that in a different color. Let's put that in blue. All right, 10 over 15. But I can reduce that because 5 goes into both of them. It goes into 10 2 times. And it goes into 15 3 times, okay? So, oh look, it's the same ratio. It doesn't have to be, that's coincidental, okay? These things are completely different. But its ratio is 2 to 3, and I can write it as 2 to 3. I also have to write these things reduced. I can't write 10 to 15. I need to reduce them as if they were fractions. And 2 to 3. Nice. Good job. That's some good work with some ratios. All right, let's look at the next one. The quotient, 9 feet to 5 yards, is not a ratio because the units are not the same. Look, this one's feet and this one's yards, but I can change yards into feet. It says change the quotient to a ratio of feet to feet and to a ratio of yards to yards. Okay? Are the 2 ratios equal? Well, let's think about this. First one, we're going to change them both to feet. Well, 9 feet, that's already there. Now, wait a minute. Let's see. 3 feet equals 1 yard. And if I've got 5 yards, then that means I've got 3 times 5. I've got 15 feet. Okay. So 9 feet to 15 feet. Now, remember, in a ratio, I don't keep the units because they're the same. So I get rid of those, and then I reduce it. 3 goes into both of those. 3 goes into 9 3 times. And then 3 goes into 15 5 times. Now this is only the first part of this question. They said change them both to yards as well, and we're going to do that in the next video.